Hello and welcome to another episode of Surviving History Today.
Today we'll be taking a look at something that non-history nerds and history nerds will love.
Egypt! Egypt, the land of mummies, pharaohs, pyramids, very interesting political and social hierarchy, and they had a system for taxes. It's great, you're gonna love it.
So we'll be breaking it down into a few parts, on an economical scale, a political one, economics and even culture. But today we're going to focus on the social life in ancient Egypt. So if you're looking for something about the taxes or the now, we suggest you look at the next video.
So, first and foremost, you have to know about the social hierarchy in Egypt. Now, a hierarchy is an order of importance, which is always depicted with the pyramid. I know, very relevant. So, an example of a hierarchy would be in school, the principal on top, then the teachers, and then at the bottom, the students. But of course in Egypt, this hierarchy was on a much bigger scale and it determined the entire course of society for them.
So, this hierarchy will be shown in the best possible way. And here you see the slaves and farmers at the bottom, the craftsmen, merchants, scribes, then the soldiers. Above that, the officials and the priests, the pharaoh, and on top of everything, the gods. So these slaves were not like the slaves you know from European slave trade. These people were often in debt or had committed a crime. For example, if I stole a loaf of bread, I would have to work on a pyramid for 2 years or so. Also, people could sell themselves as slaves when they needed the money or they tried to escape poverty. Otherwise, they were either prisoners they captured in war, or they were just kidnapped from the street.
Fun fact, it would happen occasionally that someone would kidnap a slave from a neighbor family. And then sometimes the family would find out, so they would go up to their neighbors and demand their slave back, which of course some money as to compensate for the whole stealing of my property thing.
So what's also important to keep in mind that if slaves got children, those children would automatically be slaves as well. So to sum it all up, people in Egypt were either slaves because they were had committed a crime, they were in debt, they sold themselves as slaves, or they were just kidnapped or something like that.
Now, slaves are different from workers or farmers. Farmers and workers were people who worked the land and had to pay taxes every year to the pharaoh. Slaves were actually property of people and didn't get paid for the work they did. Now, in the hunter-gatherers video, we talked about specialization, meaning a surplus of food is used to feed people who can then specialize in non-food related work. For example, I could start making weapons and then trade that with farmer Suzanne for food. Now in Egypt, this same surplus occurred and made sure that this whole hierarchy could exist. We're going to talk about the economics of it later on in the taxes video, but just keep it all in mind.
So, slaves stood the craftsmen, those who made weapons, armor, pottery, and all things that needed to be made. Merchants were those who traded the goods, for example with other countries such as Lebanon. Atop of the craftsmen, you can see the scribes. These were people who could actually read and write. Most of what they had to write down was administration. For example, how much wheat had been delivered by the farmers. But they also recorded happenings that were very important, or made certain contracts. They wrote on wood, pottery, stone, and sometimes papyrus, which is a sort of paper. Soldiers were placed even higher up than the scribes. Their high rank was based upon their importance to the society. I mean, in ancient times, a civilization without an army would pretty much be doomed to fall victim to local groups of nomads who would occasionally attack the towns and temples. Priests were people who could supposedly communicate with all the gods. They were also in charge of the whole burial process. meaning that they were people who made the mummies. Now the government officials were the pharaoh's advisors, the generals of the army, and those in charge of finances, meaning money, and the high priest. These officials were picked by the pharaoh himself, and they were mostly friends of him or even family. Oh, that's a load of text. Want to take over?
Sure. Now, we're almost through. Just 2 more ranks. The Pharaoh and the gods. The Pharaoh was the name of a king or emperor in Egypt. I use the term god and pharaoh separately, but they almost have the same meaning. You see, the pharaohs were the representatives of God on earth. Now, this view probably came from the story of Osiris and Seth. So, there was Osiris, who was a pharaoh. He was very handsome, good, and he brought prosperity to the land. Now, his brother Seth was very jealous of Osiris' powers. So in a jealous rage, he murdered him and then hid his body. The wife of Osiris, Isis, went to find the body and brought it back to Egypt. But when Seth saw the body, he got so angry that he tore it up into pieces and spread these pieces all over Egypt. Now Isis went on a long journey through Egypt to find all the body parts of Osiris and bring them back. Every time she found a body part, she built a shrine there in honor of her husband. Now during this journey, Isis gave birth to the son of Osiris, who grew up to kill Seth and take revenge on his father. When Seth was killed and Osiris' body parts were brought back to Egypt, Osiris was lifted to the status of a god, and he became the god of prosperity. Seth, however, was doomed to go down into the dank, dark parts of the earth and become the god of chaos.
So there's only one item left to discuss, and no, it's not some detailed old story about gods. No, it is just a theme of inequality. Basically, all this specialization led to the fact that there were more differences in social classes, in contrast to what was happening in the hunters and gatherers, at the time of the hunters and gatherers.
And that's basically all you need to know, for now.
So, if you missed anything, just rewatch the video. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye!
Alligator! I only stole a loaf of bread. You're a criminal and a slave. Screw you, Wolverine. You'll be a slave forever. Ha ha ha. Look down, you'll always be a slave. Look down, you're walking through your graves.